one of the main defining moments that helped me walk away from the church, and in my book I put this as, I describe it like my life, the pendulum of my life was swinging, and it got to one point and just hesitated for a moment before it completely swung in the other direction. It happened on Easter. If you stop going to church and you're still calling yourself a Christian, one of the things that you'll probably still do is go to church on Easter. You'll probably still go to church on Christmas. And I recognized this growing up in the church. Easter and Christmas, the church was standing room only, and you see people that you haven't seen for a long time. And that's, either because they're coming home to visit and they go back to the church where they grew up, or they have this feeling of guilt that, well, I can't miss Easter, right? And that's how I felt. I got to go to church on Easter. So I put on my suit and tie. I was living in Dallas, Texas, so I found a Lutheran church easily, and I went. And I sat in my car, probably most of the service, just thinking, first of all, what am I doing here? Is this really what I want? If I, do I want to go in there? I know what they're going to say. I've heard it all before. So, all of these thoughts were happening in my head, and I ended up just going home. After I had become my own person, as I've been putting it, I decided, well, one of the things I was reading about, Gordon Wasson, I had heard of John Allegro, I had heard of all of these different opinions that people had, and even facts that people had put forward, that religion is based on shamanism, religion is based on sun worship. So yeah, I had decided maybe this isn't a bad thing. I had already smoked cannabis several times, big deal. I went to film school, so I didn't know anybody who hadn't smoked cannabis at that point. But yeah, psychedelics really helped me understand. It was that moment that, aha, they're right. I wasn't so naive to think that I was the first person to feel this intense feeling. A lot of people don't like the term entheogen because it has to do with a God and engendering God within you. But for me, growing up Christian, that's what it did. It made me realize that God isn't some old man sitting on a throne up in the sky. God is omnipresent. God is everywhere. And there's no separation between me and this chair that I'm sitting in or the shirt that I'm wearing. There's no separation between the air and the lungs that are doing the breathing. So, if you want to call that God, cool, label it whatever you want. Fine. But for me, it was a divine experience because I realized that I was God. Everything around me was divine. So without psychedelics, I don't think I would have ever seen that. I still would have been based in faith and belief of what other people were saying, whether it was at the church or in a book that I was reading that tried to debunk the church. Still believing in what somebody else is saying. To have the experience myself was, necessary for me to evolve into what I am now, whatever that is. Somebody who can think freely and not be based in dogma and things like that. So yeah, psychedelics have played a really big part in my eye-opening experience. Well, my first mushroom experience was not a pleasant one. We were all naive. We were all psychedelic novice idiots. We didn't know anything about dosage. We just bought some psilocybin mushrooms. They were psilocybe cubensis, and there were 4 of us. So, split it into 4, right? And I don't have any idea how many mushrooms I ate or how much weight I ate that night. But I know that I've never had that much since in one night, and I don't think the people that I was with have either. It was laying flat on my back. Movement is not an option. And that's when I had that ego death experience where I, that part of me that recognizes me as an individual and separate from everything else was gone, right? And I remember I was laying one way on the bed, my friend was laying the other way, and our heads were kind of next to each other. And every now and then I'd look over at him and he was like, "This happening to you too, man?" And, "Yeah, it's happening to me too, man." So for me, there was a weird moment in it where the mushroom actually started to talk to me and tell me about myself, about my past, about my future, about options that I had, in life. And it was strange. It was strange. I've always described it this way by saying a disc appeared in front of me, and it was like a record, and I could pick the needle up and put it on the record wherever I wanted. And the record was a record of my life. And I could start at the very beginning, or I could go to the end, wherever I had the courage to go and be told the truth about where I was at that moment. So that was, pretty strange. But then, it got into moments that I don't even remember. That's why I think that I might have taken too much, because if you have a psychedelic experience and you don't remember it, what good is that doing for you? So there were parts where I was just, the next morning I didn't remember, and today I don't remember. So, the parts that I do remember changed me forever. Whether it was a spiritual experience or not, a lot of it was an awakening, is more of a way of putting it. Spiritual, yeah, in hindsight, where the next day I was like, well, that happened to me and I just ate something that grew out in the yard, what was that all about? How can I be, like I said, how can I be so naive to think that I'm the first one who could just take and eat that and have such an awakening experience? So yeah, spiritually I evolved. The next day, looking back on what had happened to me that night was an eye-opener, yeah.